Injured and alone, still waiting. This heartbreaking puppy's story will bring you to tears. The rain poured down mercilessly, soaking the shivering little puppy to the bone. It lay on the cold pavement, its tiny body curled up in pain. Each breath was slow, weak, almost as if it was too tired to keep fighting. Its fur, once soft and warm, was now matted with mud and blood. Every inch of its body ached. But worse than the pain was the unbearable loneliness. Headlights flashed in the distance. The puppy's ears perked up, its heart pounding with a desperate hope. Maybe this time someone would stop. Maybe this time someone would care. Car slowed down for a second, then drove away. The puppy let out a small whimper, barely louder than the rain. It wasn't just the cold that made it shiver. It was the realization that no one was coming. No one was going to save it. It was just a tiny, forgotten soul waiting for what it didn't even know anymore. Once upon a time, this puppy had warmth, safety, and love. But now, it was nothing more than a shadow, unseen and ignored. Every time footsteps approached, the puppy lifted its weak head, its tired eyes searching for kindness. But people walked past without even glancing down. No one saw the silent tears in its eyes. No one heard its trembling breath. Its tiny stomach growled from hunger, but it was too weak to move. Days had passed since it had last eaten, and its body was slowly giving up. But still, deep inside its fragile heart, there was a flicker of hope. Someone had to come. Someone had to care. So, despite the pain, despite the exhaustion, the puppy stayed there, waiting and waiting and waiting. The puppy's story wasn't always one of pain and suffering. There was a time when life was different, when it had warmth, love, and a place it called home. But fate had other plans. Somewhere along the way, that happiness was stolen, leaving the little creature abandoned, injured, and completely alone. Not long ago, this puppy had a mother, a soft, warm presence that kept it safe. In the early days of its life, it would curl up beside her, feeling her gentle heartbeat and knowing it was protected. She would nuzzle it, lick its tiny face, and guide it with her paws. The world felt safe, and every moment was filled with love. But love is not always enough. One day, something happened that shattered that small, peaceful world. Perhaps its mother was taken away, captured by humans, taken to a shelter, or worse, lost forever. Maybe the puppy was born on the streets, and one moment of bad luck separated it from its family. Or maybe the story was even sadder. Maybe the puppy once had a home, a place where it was cared for, even if only for a short time. A home where it played, wagged its tiny tail, and looked up at humans with trusting eyes. It might have curled up on a soft bed, feeling safe and loved. But then, everything changed. One day, the humans who were supposed to love it simply decided they didn't want it anymore. Perhaps they realized taking care of a puppy was too much work. Maybe it was too weak, too sick, or just unwanted. And so, instead of keeping it, they did the unthinkable. They took the puppy far away and left it behind. At first, it didn't understand. It ran after the car as fast as its tiny legs could carry it. It barked, cried, begged them to come back. But the car never stopped. It never even slowed down. And just like that, the little puppy's world went dark. Lost and confused, the puppy wandered through unfamiliar streets. The world that had once felt safe now seemed terrifying. Loud noises, flashing lights, and people moving too fast. It was all too much. It was hungry, but there was no food. It was tired, but there was no place to rest. But worst of all, it was scared. Then came the accident. Maybe it was a speeding car that didn't stop in time. Maybe it was a cruel person who kicked it aside as if it was nothing. Or maybe, in its desperate search for shelter, the puppy slipped, fell, and got hurt. Whatever happened, the result was the same. Its tiny body was covered in scratches and bruises. A deep wound throbbed on its leg, making every step painful. But no one stopped to help. No one even looked down to see its pain. As the days passed, the injury got worse. The pain became unbearable, but the puppy had no choice but to keep moving. It limped through alleys, searching for food, for water, for anything. But most of all, it searched for someone. Anyone. Someone who would see it, who would care, who wouldn't just walk past like all the others. But no one came. And so, under a street lamp on a cold, wet night, the puppy curled up into a tiny ball. Its little body trembled from exhaustion, hunger, and pain. Its once bright eyes were now dull, filled with sadness that no creature should ever have to feel. But even then, even in the darkness, a small hope remained. Maybe, just maybe, someone would come. And so it waited. The world was loud, cold, and unforgiving. But the puppy had no choice but to keep going. Every day was a battle, a fight to stay alive in a place that seemed determined to forget it even existed. It had no voice to cry out for help, no strength to run to safety. All it could do was endure. But how much longer could it last? The days blurred into nights, and hunger became an unbearable ache in its tiny belly. The puppy, once playful and full of life, now walked with slow, painful steps. It was weak, exhausted, and constantly searching for food, for shelter, for something, anything, to ease its suffering. It scavenged through trash bins, hoping to find even the smallest scrap of food. Sometimes it found a stale piece of bread or a half-eaten meal thrown away by someone who had too much. Other times it found nothing at all. Water was even harder to come by. It licked puddles from the street, ignoring the bitter taste of dirt and oil. But dehydration made its throat dry, its body weaker. Each day, survival became harder. And then there was the pain. The wound on its leg had worsened. Infection had set in, making it swell and burn. Every step felt like fire, but the puppy kept moving because stopping meant giving up, and something inside it refused to quit. It had learned to avoid people. Some threw stones, others shouted, and some simply turned away, pretending not to see. The world had made one thing clear. No one cared. But still, deep inside, the puppy held onto a fragile hope. The puppy had been waiting for so long, waiting for the pain to fade, waiting for someone to notice, waiting for something, anything to change. But nothing ever did. Night after night, it curled up in the same lonely corner, under the same flickering streetlight. The ground was cold and unforgiving, but it had nowhere else to go. As raindrops fell, soaking through its thin fur, it no longer had the energy to shake them off. Its little body trembled, not just from the cold but from sheer exhaustion. Why was it still waiting? Did it think its owner would come back for it? Did it hope a kind stranger would finally stop? Or was it simply too weak to move on? Its tiny, fragile heart still clung to the idea that someone, somewhere, would care enough to save it. And so, despite the hunger, the pain, and the loneliness, the puppy did the only thing it knew how to do. It waited. Just when the puppy's hope had nearly faded to nothing, when its small body had given in to exhaustion and pain, something changed. For the first time in what felt like forever, the world didn't turn away. The moment it had been waiting for, without even realizing it, had finally arrived. Footsteps echoed on the wet pavement, slow but purposeful. The puppy barely had the strength to lift its head, but something about these steps felt different. Unlike all the others who had walked past without a second glance, this person stopped. A gentle voice broke through the silence. It wasn't the harsh yelling it had come to fear. It wasn't dismissive or cruel. It was soft, careful, filled with concern. "Oh, sweetheart, what happened to you?" A warm hand reached out. The puppy flinched at first, memories of rough hands pushing it away, of pain, of being ignored. But this touch was different. It was cautious, hesitant, almost afraid of causing more harm. The person knelt down, their eyes filled with something the puppy had forgotten existed. Kindness. For the first time in days, the puppy felt seen. Not as a burden, not as a nuisance, but as something precious, as something worth saving. But time was running out. The kind stranger quickly realized how dire the situation was. The puppy's body was far too cold, its breathing shallow. The wound on its leg had become infected, and its frail frame told a painful story of starvation. They scooped the puppy up, cradling it gently against their chest. For a brief moment, warmth replaced the bitter cold. The puppy whimpered weakly, pressing its tiny nose against the person's jacket. It was too exhausted to understand what was happening. But for the first time in what felt like forever, it wasn't alone. Every second mattered. The stranger rushed to their car, placing the puppy carefully on a blanket in the passenger seat. The engine roared to life, tires splashing against the wet road as they sped toward help. Would they make it in time? Would the puppy survive after everything it had been through? The battle wasn't over yet, but for the first time the puppy wasn't fighting alone. The little puppy had spent so much time suffering, enduring the cold, hunger, and pain alone, that the warmth of human touch felt almost unreal. As the car sped through the dark streets, the kind stranger kept glancing over, eyes filled with concern. Would they make it in time? Would the puppy survive after everything it had endured? The world outside blurred past, but inside the car, something had shifted. For the first time in a long time, the puppy wasn't just waiting for something terrible to happen. It was being carried toward hope. The emergency clinic was bathed in bright, sterile light, a stark contrast to the cold, dark streets the puppy had called home. The moment the stranger rushed through the doors with the tiny, limp body in their arms, the veterinarians sprang into action. A team of professionals carefully placed the puppy on an examination table. It barely reacted, too weak, too exhausted to resist. The vet's gentle hands ran over its frail body, assessing the damage. Every rib was visible beneath its thin fur, its paw pads were cracked, and its once soft ears were rough from exposure. The worst of all was the infected wound on its leg. The vet's expression turned grim as they cleaned the area, applying medicine to fight the infection that had already begun spreading. "We need to keep him here," the vet said firmly, looking up at the kind stranger. "He's malnourished, dehydrated, and fighting a serious infection. It's a miracle he lasted this long." The puppy was placed on an 4-drip, receiving the nourishment and fluids it had been desperately lacking. The warmth of a soft blanket replaced the harsh, wet pavement it had grown used to. A gentle hand ran over its head, soothing whispers filling the air. It still didn't understand why things were suddenly different, why the world was no longer cruel. But its tired body surrendered to the care it had always deserved. Hours turned into days. The puppy, once too weak to move, slowly found the strength to sit up. The first time it licked a bowl of warm food, it was hesitant, as if unsure if it was really meant for him. But as nourishment filled its tiny belly, it realized this wasn't a dream. Its wounds, both seen and unseen, had begun to heal. Physical recovery was only half the battle. The deeper wounds, the ones left by betrayal and loneliness, took longer to mend. At first, the puppy remained cautious. Every time the stranger reached out, it flinched. Every time a loud noise echoed through the clinic, it curled up as if expecting the worst. The world had been so cruel before. How could it believe in kindness now? But the stranger never gave up. They visited every day, speaking softly, offering gentle pets and treats. They never forced the puppy to come closer, never pressured it to trust before it was ready. Little by little, the puppy began to believe. The first time it wagged its tail, just the tiniest bit, it was a breakthrough. The first time it nuzzled against the stranger's hand, trust had begun to take root. And then, one day, something incredible happened. As the kind stranger sat beside the puppy's crate, talking to it as they always did, the puppy stood up, walked over, and placed its tiny paw on their hand. It was a silent message, a fragile but powerful promise. It had been waiting for so long. Waiting for love, waiting for kindness, waiting for someone to care. Now, it didn't have to wait anymore. It was finally home. The journey had been long, filled with pain, uncertainty, and heartbreak. But now, as the little puppy stood on strong legs, eyes brighter than ever, it was clear. The past no longer defined it. What once seemed impossible had become real. The nightmare was over, and a new chapter was about to begin. The day finally came when the puppy was strong enough to leave the clinic. It had survived against all odds, but where would it go now? The kind stranger had been there through it all, never missing a single visit, watching over the puppy as it healed. And now, as they stood in the doorway, leash in hand, they smiled softly and whispered, "Let's go home." For a moment, the puppy hesitated. Home? The word was unfamiliar. Was it another cold, lonely place where it would be forgotten? Or was it something more? The answer came as soon as they arrived. A warm house, a soft bed, a bowl with its name on it. No more hunger, no more cold nights curled up on the pavement, no more waiting. At first, the puppy explored cautiously. Every shadow, every sound felt like it might take this happiness away. But as days passed, it settled in, realizing something incredible. This wasn't temporary. This was forever. The first time it curled up in its new bed without fear, it knew. The first time it looked up at its human and saw love instead of indifference, it understood. The past would always be a part of its story, but it no longer defined its future. As the puppy lay peacefully beside its new owner, tail wagging lazily, its story wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about hope. How many others were still out there, waiting? How many broken souls were watching footsteps pass them by, hoping that just one person would stop? Not everyone can save every animal, but everyone can do something. Maybe it's a warm meal left for a stray. Maybe it's reporting an abandoned pet to a rescue. Maybe it's simply spreading awareness so no one else has to suffer in silence. Because in the end, it only takes one person to change a life. Just like this kind stranger did. And as the puppy drifted off to sleep, safe and loved at last, one thing was clear. It had been waiting for a miracle. And finally, that miracle had come. The story of this puppy isn't just one in a million. It's one of millions. Every day, countless animals suffer in silence, abandoned, injured, and waiting for someone to notice them. But this story proves that one small act of kindness can change everything. Now it's time to turn this story into action. Not everyone can rescue a stray, but everyone can do something. See an animal in need? Call a local rescue or shelter. A simple report could save a life. Can't adopt? Consider fostering or donating to shelters that work tirelessly to help animals like this puppy. Want to make a difference? Volunteer, spread awareness, or educate others about responsible pet care. No action is too small. Even sharing this story could inspire someone else to step up. Now, we want to hear from you. Have you ever rescued an animal? Share your experience in the comments. Your story might inspire someone else to do the same. What would you have done if you saw this puppy on the street? Let us know your thoughts. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to help spread awareness about the importance of animal rescue. Together, we can make sure no animal has to suffer alone ever again. Because sometimes all it takes is one person to change a life. Will you be that person?